All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is Tim McDonald coming to you with another episode of Advocacy at Work. And today I am with Brian Giddle from Exact Sciences. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing great, Tim. It's great to see you.
It's good to see you, and I so appreciate you taking time to do this with us today. If you could just give everybody just kind of a, real quick introduction of yourself and
Sure.
What you do with Exact Sciences.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, I'm Brian Gettle. I've been with Exact Sciences just over 8 years. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Alliance Relations. I've been privileged to serve within this role for a little over 6 years. And I'd say at the core of my role is working with the colorectal cancer advocacy community, finding ways in which our missions align, really to, at the end of the day, to find ways to get more people screened for colorectal cancer.
Well, it's a very worthy mission. And I'm so glad that I've gotten a chance to know you through all the advocacy work that you guys do as a colorectal cancer survivor. And I try and do my best to do a lot what you guys do, but obviously in a much smaller scale. But before we get too far into the conversation, can you just explain how Exact Sciences defines advocacy? Because I think that's a good baseline for everybody, because, especially in the healthcare field, we see it used in so many different ways. Mm-hmm. And I just want everybody to kind of have a frame of reference of how we're going to be discussing it today with you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Tim. I would say, in its simplest form, it's really working toward a cause that we believe in. But when I say we as an Exact, for us, it's, and within our team, it's focused on screening. And so it is really working toward creating change. And that, I would say historically people think of advocacy as policy. And in many cases it can be policy, but really within our team, we look even beyond that. And what are ways that we can create change or build pathways to, I think, as I mentioned earlier, really remove barriers to screening so that everybody has access to, the recommended screening methods.
No, that is great and very helpful. So let's jump in right away, because I think this is a good point. Just to tell us a little bit about Exact Sciences and how exactly do the advocates that you work with help you drive your mission?
Sure. Exact has really evolved over time, especially even since I've been there. I think a lot of people, when they think of Exact Sciences, they think of Cologuard, which is completely appropriate. That is our product that has been around the longest, which is an at-home stool test for colorectal cancer. But Exact has really broadened its portfolio over the years. And really now we are a company that is at the forefront of, early detection and treatment for cancer.
One, as I've learned through some of the involvement with what you guys do, it's really looking at everything from before you're diagnosed, and hopefully
exactly.
If you do get diagnosed, or not hopefully if you get diagnosed, hopefully
Sure.
You don't get diagnosed because you're screening in advance, that you guys are looking to be with the patient through their entire journey, even post-treatment into survivorship.
Yep.
So it's exciting things happening, and just watching you guys evolve. So, and how do the advocates that you work with help you move that needle forward in that mission?
Yeah, I mean, Tim, from getting to know you, and I've been really privileged within my role to get to know, people like you and others who have been in the thick of the fight. And there's nothing more powerful in advocacy than a personal story. Looking at your background with the capital behind you, it's one thing if myself or a colleague or even a member of leadership from an advocacy organization walks in to a meeting with a member of Congress, but there is no substitute for the deeply personal story that somebody who has been personally affected by cancer can tell. And so that, for the role of an advocate, it really in its simplest form is somebody who can go in and just be their authentic self and explain their own story. That is what will resonate and stick with the people who, have the most ability to create change.
Yes, and I've heard that from a lot of other organizations that I'm part of as well, is there's nothing more powerful than the patient story. And I'm, it's refreshing that because most of the organizations that I'm involved with are nonprofits, and I know you guys are for-profit, but to see and that's why I was excited to talk to you, because you're my first one that I'm talking to that's not a nonprofit.
Sure.
To see what you guys do here. So we're, I know it's easy to look at where we're at today, but I know you said there's been a lot of changes just since you've been there for 8 years, I believe you said. And I know Exact Science has been around longer than that. So were advocates always part of Exact Science, or how did that kind of come into play?
Yeah, it's really evolved a lot. I mean, when I started, I was in a different role when I started here at Exact Sciences, and we didn't even have a dedicated advocacy department. Some of it kind of fell within my initial role within public relations, but I think for us, there was certainly a recognition. There were a lot of, big priority issues that were affecting the colorectal cancer community. When I started, the screening age was at 50. And it's certainly a topic now, but even then we were seeing this really disturbing trend of more and more people under the age of 50 getting diagnosed with colorectal cancer. So there was a really growing movement to work toward lowering that screening age to 45. And so that was a prime example of how in that period from 2016 to 2018, before ACS was really the leader in lowering that screening age to 45, that we worked hand in glove with the advocacy community, to play our small part in, whether it was building an evidence base or, finding the right voices to help the guideline bodies recognize the need to lower that screening age to 45, to help more people have access to screening and ideally avoid a late stage diagnosis.
Yeah, and it's funny because I know we talked about kind of creating awareness and making it more accessible for everybody to get screened, and I know you said when you gave your definition that it was legislative, usually when you think of advocacy. But it's kind of interesting that, with the example you just gave there, how, sometimes both of those things kind of overlap a little bit, and you can actually use, the advocates that you work with and the organizations that you work with to actually help either support them or work with them to make legislative change happen that helps enable more people to get screened, which is really what your main mission is with your advocacy program. So they kind of fit hand in hand, and it just doesn't fit into one bucket of, just creating awareness. It's more, a lot of other ancillary things that come into play. And how have you seen this change? I mean, obviously you've been there for 8 years. So, let's just look at that 8 years that you've been there. And I know you said you were in a different role when you started, but how has it kind of evolved? And I've actually seen it in the 5 years almost that I've been involved in this space. I've seen it change with you guys. So from your viewpoint, how has it evolved over the years that you've been involved and gotten in with Exact Sciences and the advocacy department?
Yeah, I mean, I really think, some of it is, I mean, we've been really fortunate. My boss, Mary Doroshank, came from leading the National Colorectal Cancer Roundtable, division of the American Cancer Society for many years. And so she came, looking at advocacy through a public health lens. Yeah, as you mentioned, yes, we are a for-profit company, but to have somebody who has dedicated, most of her life to to public health, and then also the relationships that she had built over the years. I think under her leadership, we have really evolved our advocacy strategy to the way we work with organizations. It's, really, it's most maybe easily put that we just try to find ways where our missions align. And I think our missions in many ways are aligned with many of the leading advocacy groups in the country that are working toward this change. And where can we, make the most impact together? And, when I first came to Exact, sure, there's merit in supporting an organization's 5K or a certain event by providing financial support and being an event sponsor. And that still exists at Exact Sciences, but we really look toward where we can get our hands dirty and do some work together. And so I'm really proud of some of the different programs that we have done with some of these organizations, like with Fight Colorectal Cancer. We've helped fund this Catalyst state grant program now for going on 7 years. That has really made a meaningful difference at the state level, whether it's federal policy has been, maybe a longer road, addressing things on a state-by-state basis, we know is making a difference in giving more people access to screening without facing a bill.
That's fantastic. I love the work. I've been involved in nonprofit work before I was diagnosed. So I know, how difficult it is for some of these organizations it's easier to do at the national level because you're talking with one basically body of governing people versus on a state level, it's hard to replicate 50 times what you can do one time in the national level. So I know they need a lot of support to be able to make that possible to expand into states. And so I commend you for, recognizing that and being able to help support them in doing that. One thing that this is perhaps my favorite question that I ask, because nobody has a direct answer for it, but how do you measure the impact that advocates have and your advocacy program has at Exact Sciences?
Yeah, I mean, look, and I can see why it's hard to get a direct answer. Some things are, with marketing or things like that, you can measure things with clicks or impressions or things like that. Advocacy, it can be harder, and I'm really grateful that I think Exact Sciences recognizes the importance of advocacy and that it can be a long road, right? And, at the end of the day, for example, looking at lowering the screening age, obviously that's a tangible way to see it, right? Is when the guidelines lower the screening age to 45, that's a pretty strong measure of success. We know that the advocacy community played a key role in that. And so I think, policy wins are certainly one way of looking at it, but I think it even goes beyond policy. And, even if it is inch by inch building toward, how we can make sure patients have access to a follow-up colonoscopy without having to pay anything out of pocket, and even in some cases, simply just getting that logistical access to that follow-up colonoscopy. It sometimes will require some digging to really put a firm mark on what that exactly means. But I think for us, it's a twofold. It's a recognition that it can be a long process, but then looking at whatever ways we can to mark that success, and working with our advocacy partners to understand that together is I'd say, I guess, a key part.
Yeah, and I'm just kind of curious too, and I love the example that you use, but even just my experience in being a part of the Cologuard Classic that you guys sponsor each year and seeing how it's evolved in the 4 years that I've, when I first went to where we are what happened in March this year, you know, and just how many more advocates you help these organizations bring to Tucson for that, how much more exposure you're getting on the national stage, you know, with media coverage of the event. And then also all the advocates, the number of advocates that show up each year, the fact that, you know, they're still talking about the Cologuard Classic today, right? And we're in July versus this happening in March. I mean, the guy that I was fortunate enough to be paired with this year as in the Pro-Am, Padre Harrington, ended up winning the U.S. Senior Championship. And so it was like, I got to actually say, I played with him in the Pro-Am, congratulate him on, you know, on social media. So that's just bringing, you know, bringing the Cologuard name and, you know, Exact Sciences and what you guys are trying to do to the public and let people know that, oh yeah, you know, like I did just turn 45. I need to go talk to my doctor about getting screened or whatever that is. So all those little moments, I'm sure also kind of, you know, you measure some of those things, I'm sure as well, maybe not in the way I described it, but, you know, certain components of that.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, we're really grateful that the community has embraced what we have tried to do with the Cologuard Classic. And it is really powerful to bring not only that, you know, so many organizations together. I think we had 17 different colorectal cancer advocacy organizations represented at this year's Cologuard Classic, and, you know, 360 plus patient survivors and loved ones to come out, but to create a unified voice and allow for a platform where this community can be together is only going to strengthen the impact that each one of those individuals and organizations can have when they leave Tucson. Everybody can learn from each other, from their own experiences, and gain maybe confidence to share their own stories and their voices. You know, I've heard that a lot from people who maybe when they came to Tucson didn't really know what advocacy was or weren't sure they were ready to share their voice. You know, understandably, many individuals were focused just simply on their own battle and in the midst of treatment. And it's been really rewarding to hear those stories of people who have talked to folks like yourself and others who have dedicated a lot of their time to advocacy, who then leave Tucson and feel energized and confident to use their voice to make a difference.
No, that's fantastic. And I can't tell you, like, you know, what a good feeling as an advocate who goes to these types of events when I hear from somebody like a year, 2 years, even 3 years later, like, you know, how my story and sharing that experience of going through this myself and being an advocate while I was going through it has inspired them to get involved and do stuff. It's like, it's just kind of one of those things that, you know, a lot of times we don't get that validation. And it's always nice to, when you hear that, even though it's not in the moment, that it just kind of fueled you up and wants to keep you going forward and doing your work. So I'm sure you guys get a lot more of those than us individual advocates, I'm sure.
Yeah, but, you know, I think, and this kind of goes back to what you brought up at the beginning, you know, we're in a unique position as a for-profit company, right? And that means that we also, there's a lot of rules and regulations we have to follow, but we also appreciate, you know, for us to work with, whether it be an advocacy organization or an individual advocate like yourself, we have to work to build that level of trust to, for people to see that we're in this for more than just trying to get more people to utilize our products or things like that. And I think the Cologuard Classic has been a platform where we can do that. I know from my own perspective, that is really at the core of where I find purpose in my work. You know, that I've built lifelong friendships, like with people like you and many others through that event, seeing what it means to them, seeing what people have gone through, are going through. It goes back to the power of advocacy, right? I mean, these are the people that their own stories make a difference with members of Congress, but I can tell you personally, those are the people that make a difference in my own life and in my own work, and motivate me every day to give me reason behind what and purpose behind what I do.
I'm going to throw another question in here that I didn't prep you for, just because I just thought of it and I think it's so relevant to what we're talking about. And I think specifically because of the fact that, most for-profit companies don't realize this, and most of the nonprofits that work in this space do, this is like the first time in my life I've ever been involved in community aspects where, you lose so many people that are going on. And I'm sure that working in a for-profit company, it's probably the last thing you expect, right? I haven't experienced it in any for-profit company I've been in, that you're going to, maybe every once in a while, a rare thing. And nonprofits that are in this space, I think, understand it. But everything you just talked about, the fueling and everything, I want to look at the other side of it, because there is so much loss that we experience. And does that impact you? I think the same way it impacts me as an advocate, like getting to know these people, understand who they are. I know we just lost somebody that we all loved not too long ago, Jill, McDonald, who was an ambassador with me at Fight CRC, just, absolute, inspiration of a person. I know you had a close relationship with her too, and her wife. Does that sting you as much as it stings me individually?
No, no question. And, I've even talked to Angie Davis, who leads Fight Colorectal Cancer, about this. And it is hard. And I recognize that maybe within my role, it's maybe a little bit unique to develop, relationships that personal, and it certainly makes it harder. And Jill is a great example. I just met her a little over a year ago at the Colorectal Classic, and we became instant friends. And it was a very tough loss. And I'm grateful I got to attend her celebration of life in St. Louis a few weeks ago. And, sometimes I do have to remind myself, like, man, this is I guess it comes with the territory of building bonds with people who are fighting colon cancer, but I wouldn't trade it for anything, because even if I only get to know some of these individuals, Mike Mancini is another one who is one of the first I got to know really well. And that one hit me really, really hard. And I still think about him often. But I wouldn't, as painful as the loss is, when we lose somebody like that, the memories that were created through the time of knowing them, and the purpose again that it also brings to the work, I have no regrets.
Yeah, no, I kind of feel the same way. It's taken me a little bit of time, I think, especially since I've gotten to no evidence of disease status, that, just coming to grips with how to deal with continual loss, which is what I call it, because it's almost every day that I'm, somebody I know is, winning their battle. But, I love what, another guy that we both know, Trevor Maxwell with Man Up to Cancer, the founder of Man Up to Cancer, says is that, the pain of losing somebody is only eclipsed by the joy of knowing them.
That is much more articulate than whatever I just said, but that is,
no, but you said it.
That is the bullseye right there.
You said it too, just in a slightly different way, but
I could not agree more.
Yeah. So let's get into, I didn't want to bring it down too much, but I do think it's important to, talk about and discuss, because it is something that, I think the more you get into advocacy, especially in the healthcare space, especially in the cancer space, that, it isn't all the ups, there's a lot of pain that comes with it, a lot of sadness that comes with it, and a lot of struggle that comes with it. But all that being said, I think the work that we do and seeing the output of that work, even if it takes some time, helps us just keep going past all that, and just part of the journey that we have to go through. So I appreciate you indulging me with going there for a couple minutes. But let's have a fun, before we close out with my last question, let's have a little bit of fun with what I like to call my lightning round. So I don't want you to think about these too hard. Right. You don't need to give me big, long answers. You can just, answer them. You can expand on them if you want, but just,
yep.
You answer and I'll just throw another question. We'll just have a few of them. So I'll start easy and get a little bit more difficult.
Sounds good.
So what is your favorite color?
I'm not saying this because of where we are. It's blue. I've only leaned into it more since moving into this role, but I'm also a diehard Cubs fan. So blue was a big part of my wardrobe long before coming to Exact Sciences. And now that blue is the color of CRC awareness, blue is everywhere around me. So that's an easy one.
As you can see by all the blue flags.
Yeah, exactly.
Over there. What is your favorite food?
I love pizza. I mean, I could eat it literally almost every day. And I'm not one of those, people will get in throwdowns over like New York thin, Chicago deep dish. I like them all. There's a place for all of them. That's what makes pizza so great, is you can prepare it in a million different ways. So yeah, I love pizza.
As somebody who, when I was in my 20s, married to my ex, having my kids when they were babies, and working 2 or 3 jobs at one time, a pizza delivery guy was always one of them. So I've had my fair share of pizza, and people always ask, did you get tired of eating it? And I'm like, never. No. So I totally am with you on that one. What is, something you wanted to be when you were younger, when you grew up?
For a long time, I wanted to be an actor. I did a lot of theater as a kid. Actually started college as a theater major. I changed halfway through my sophomore year, and I've still thought about, whether it's community theater or something, maybe getting back on the stage at some point. But that was what I wanted to be for a long time.
Nice. And if you could think of what's one place that you've always wanted to go but haven't been yet?
Ooh, man, there's so many. I guess a recent one is my wife and I have talked a lot about going to Scandinavia, Denmark. I don't know what, I've always just been kind of fascinated by there, whether it's to see the Northern Lights or I just think kind of the architecture. I've heard so much about the people. That's a place I'd love to go.
Well, as somebody who's been to Copenhagen 4 times, I can tell you
we're gonna have
one of my favorite cities.
Okay.
I think that's good. So that'll wrap up the lightning round, but I do have one question that I want to ask you, which is, if resources were no issue, what would you like to do with the advocacy program at Exact Sciences?
Yeah, I mean, if resources were no issue, what we hear understandably from this community and through people I've known, right, is the people who are under the screening age who have been, impacted, diagnosed with colorectal cancer. And we hear it all the time of like, gosh, why can't we get the screening age lowered even beyond 45? The reality is, even though those cases are rising, it is hard to demonstrate that the benefit of screening outweighs the harms as you get below 45. And if we were to run a trial, for example, of Cologuard, to see if it's effective for a population under 45, you would have to enroll tens upon tens of thousands, potentially over 100,000, to find enough cancers to demonstrate the value in it. And so it's so hard to do that because it would be so expensive. So if resources were no issue, I'd love to be able to put more dollars into a trial like that, or into more research for that community to see how, if it was possible, to find more ways to help people who are under 45 avoid going through colon cancer.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Brian. And just before we finish today, if people are listening, watching this, and decide that they're interested in getting involved with advocacy, and particularly with what you guys are doing with advocacy, what suggestion would you have to them? Who should they contact? How can they learn more?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways to go about it. There's so many wonderful organizations out there. There are many that have a local or regional focus. Whether that's getting on social media or just a simple Google search of colon cancer nonprofits or advocacy groups. There's so many great ones. That's one way to start. I'm happy, Tim, if people were to check in with you, feel free to punt them over to me. I'm happy to also talk and give guidance. There was a gentleman I just met at the Southeast Colorectal Cancer Consortium, a stage 4 patient who's interested in becoming involved in advocacy, and we're looking to set up time to connect, and I'm going to give him some background on the different groups. I think one thing that's great is each group kind of has its own sweet spot, and depending on what you want to do as an advocate, that can help kind of point you in the right direction as to what might be the right fit.
I love that. Yeah. And it reminds me of the first nonprofit that I worked with No Kid Hungry, or Share Our Strength, and Billy Shore. And Share Our Strength was the whole concept was exactly that. It's like we each have a strength to share.
Yep.
It's not up to the organization to tell you what they need. It's for you to figure out what your strength is and how you can help the organization. So, well, thank you so much, Brian, for being a guest on Advocacy at Work. And I really look forward to getting this published. And if we do have anything that comes up that we feel we can have another discussion, I know you'll be open for it. And I know what you just mentioned about people reaching out to me and I could connect them with you. You are like one of the most accessible people that I've ever met in my life. And I just want to thank you for that and appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Right back at you. I was so grateful to know you. And this was a lot of fun. Enjoyed talking to you today.